Marvel had a Professor X problem. Apparently, that's why they created X-Manhunt, the event. This week, we got X-Manhunt Omega from Gail Simone, Maruea Oyedele, with Gleb Melnikov, Frederica Mancine, and Enid Balam all on art. So lots of creative people on this one. And I don't know that they fixed anything by this one, but they are deleting Professor X from the X-Men comic books for the foreseeable future, obviously saying that he was gone forever, but I don't believe that would die.
By the time Avengers Doomsday movie comes out, since Patrick Stewart as Professor X is in there, they're going to want something to capitalize on it. So boom.
And in the end, while they've, I guess, got a solution to something by jettisoning him off, I don't think this fixes any of their problems. And X-Men is still as dead as can be. And I don't think anybody even realized this event was going on.
No, nobody really did, because nobody cared, and because none of the books really, I guess, directly connected to one another. They were more tie-ins than chapters, I guess you could say.
And it kind of starts out where we have this conversation between Cyclops and Rogue, to where Rogue wants to defend Professor X. Cyclops thinks he's in prison. He should be in prison because he's a murderer, which is absolutely correct. And it's just them kind of sitting around a dinner table having coffee, yelling at each other for about 5 pages.
Look, a lot of this book seems to exist to either retcon or to fix all the major glaring plot holes that you and me and other reviewers have pointed out in all of these From the Ashes and even Fall of My Balls stories that didn't make sense, by putting in little flashback scenes that somehow address the giant glaring plot hole that was in the original story that made the original story not make any fucking sense.
So Cyclops and Rogue can find no common ground. They're obviously at odds with each other. So Cyclops then grabs magic, makes her surf an enormous sword that he pushes off with his eye beams so she can cut down a spaceship that they think is Charles, but isn't Charles. And then she summons an enormous demon kaiju. And then Pastor John Wraith shows up in an enormous Jaeger out of Pacific Rim. And we get a Jaeger versus kaiju fight for really no reason whatsoever. And it's somehow the highlight of the entire goddamn comic book.
I don't understand why John Wraith was even there, except for they needed somebody that could just randomly teleport. And apparently he can teleport a ship out of the way and a kaiju into place without anybody noticing, just so they could have a kaiju fight for no apparent reason.
It literally serves no purpose to the book whatsoever other than to provide the action.
Yeah, because there really isn't any other action throughout this book. It's mostly just people crying at each other.
It's the best scene in the book, but it makes no sense within the concept of what's going on here. But what is going on here is Elandra has come back. She's been resurrected, and she has removed the top of Charles's skull, and she's going to give him brain surgery. She's taken out his tumor, and Charles wants to go and save his daughter. But then he and Cyclops have a telepathic debate, because Cyclops thinks he should be in prison because he killed all those people on the Agnew. But now they're retconning this to where, in fact, nobody actually died on that, because we're supposed to believe the word of the fucking killer that killed all the people.
Yeah.
Because he said so.
That all the mutants that he made walk off into the fucking void are somehow been resurrected, and all of the people on the Agnew that he murdered were not actually people. They were basically life model decoys. He called them simulacrum or whatever the fuck.
Why would the U.S. government put a bunch of life model decoys on his ship? Did they just happen to know that he was going to go and murder all of them?
So he went out and he got a spaceship that matched exactly a military ship, and he found out their entire staff so he could make life model decoys of them. And apparently those fucking robots or whatever the shit it was are also subject to his mind control, so that he could mind control one of them into self-destructing it and killing nobody. Is that what we're supposed to fucking believe?
Make it make sense for me, Doc. I don't even understand the scope or what he was trying to accomplish by doing that then. To make the entire world think that he was a mass murderer?
Apparently, he must have still had precognitive knowledge of exactly what Orcus was going to do, so that he could plan against it and make them think he was going along with them, but also make the entire world think he's a mass murderer and scare the X-Men into giving up so that they'd give up their island, so that they'd not be there, so that he could go to prison, so that he could then explain to Cyclops, oh, no. It was all a giant trick. I'm sorry. This is fucking
This is a worse
man.
retcon than the Legend of the Butt Baby. It makes less sense than that.
That whole thing with the Agnew, that was Xavier's moment the same way that Magneto had that moment where he killed the entire fucking submarine full of Russians. That's his irredeemable moment. That was what the Agnew was. The only thing this is accomplishing is, oh, Xavier isn't actually bad. He never did the bad thing. You just thought he did. This is a lazy fucking retcon. I mean, look, I get it. They had written themselves into a corner, but sometimes you just have to live with it.
So Cyclops and his team are trying to stop Rogue and her team, and they're all fighting over Xavier. And Xavier actually gets away at this point, and they're still arguing. And that amount of stress causes Cyclops to have a panic attack and overwhelm like his goggles to where he can't even control his beams anymore and starts blasting everybody. But they lost Professor X.
The concerns that he had about the fact that the guy that was responsible for all this shit is sitting in their prison. And as long as he sat in their prison, the X-Men weren't going to be targets. But now that he's out, all of the different governments of the world are going to be starting to come after mutants again because they no longer have that like thing to hold over them and keep them in line. They'll think that it's kind of go time again. So he's freaked out about all that. So I understand him not liking it because he now has to basically prepare for war with the entire fucking world again.
Because it's going to be perceived that they let Professor X leave.
Exactly. It shouldn't be enough to drive Scott Summers over the edge. But at least within the context of the story, fine, whatever.
But then it gets weird. The only person that can get near him, obviously, is Wolverine because he has the ability to regenerate himself. Wolverine takes out his claws in a moment very reminiscent of a couple of those pages in House of X Powers of 10, and he guts Scott with his claws all the way through his stomach to stop the panic attack. So we've solved the Scott panic attack situation. Later on, the two are talking, and Wolverine says, sorry, I had to poke you a bit, had to wake you up some. And Scott actually says, it wasn't deep. I can literally see the claws out of his back.
Maybe he meant that it didn't hit any vital organs. Okay, it was just
how would you not hit vital organs if you've poked 3 enormous adamantium coated claws through your stomach?
Well, it was a little bit to the side, so it could have been like one of those that misses the intestines, and maybe he's already lost a kidney and had his appendix taken out. I don't know.
He certainly isn't hitting his liver, but I think he's definitely getting everything else. Maybe next time, if you want to have that be the suggestion or the answer to it, don't show the claws protruding through his back. It's a cool moment. It looks good.
It looks good. And then you literally say the thing that we showed you a couple of pages ago. Yeah, that didn't really happen.
Does Cyclops have regenerative ability like Wolverine?
No, but they probably...
How is he standing? He doesn't even have the wound anymore.
Wolverine also has new clothes later. So I think they all went and got changed. Maybe they just patched him up. Maybe just a couple of stitches. It missed all the vital organs.
Merely a flesh wound.
Yes, merely a flesh wound. Magic could have healed him up a little bit.
They don't show it. Seems like it'd be pretty key.
Yeah, they also didn't show any of them go and change their clothes to get new costumes anyway.
Why are you making excuses for this shitty comic book?
I'm just, yes, you're right. I'm saying that there's a lot of things we can beat it up for. There's some things that are a little more of a stretch. Whatever. There's some times where it's a cool visual. There's the rule of cool, and I'm letting the rule of cool pass by when it's just a minor gripe about the plot.
How about this? This is my major gripe about the plot. Cyclops freaked out. He got gutted by Wolverine. We had a kaiju versus Jaeger fight happening for no reason whatsoever, all to stop Professor X from leaving, but he still got away. As he leaves, Professor X says, you know what? I can't leave without saying goodbye. and returns knowing there's an entire team of X-Men that want to kill him. And when he returns, they just all say goodbye. They just forgot about the entire fucking plot.
Yeah. And all of Scott's concerns, the valid concerns he had on letting Xavier go and the war that it would bring between humans and mutants again. Yeah, that's just ignored just so they can.
Why did he escape to begin with if he was just going to U-turn and come back?
I don't know. I mean, they finish surgery, I guess. And it doesn't exactly say how long it was from the time that they like escaped until they turned around, because he went from having no skull cap to just needing some bandages on his head. So it's obviously been at least a couple hours, maybe a day or two. Whatever the next event is, they'll put in a flashback scene to address this major glaring plot hole as well. Be like, oh yeah, and there's 2 weeks between when Xavier got away and when he came back to say goodbye to us, and they'll address it, but they have to wait until we point out all the plot holes once again, because their editors don't edit. They just maybe, I don't even think they spell check all the conflict that was causing them to prevent him from leaving. And now they're just like, oh, well, hey, you got away once, so we'll let you go this time. What the
you
fuck,
silly
logic?
bastard. I need to kiss you on the way out now. An 8-chapter crossover event about the factions that would refuse to let Charles leave. And in the end, they just let him go.
Yeah.
What was the point? By the end of every Marvel event, everything that you've read is essentially meaningless. It happens once again in X-Manhunt. The good thing about this book, Doc, the one kudo that I will give it, is I do think this is across the board incompetent storytelling, is despite Gail Simone writing apparently most of it, there's less rogue dialogue than normal. Although when she does speak, she still sounds retarded, but there's less of it because there's other characters.
And while the art in this was pretty awful almost across the board, Rogue didn't look like Laura Dern.
I'm not the biggest fan of this. Apparently you liked it a lot more than I did. I will give this a 2 out of 5, a 4 out of 10, not recommend. I think it's actually really, really bad. And the event ended up being an enormous waste of time. It's just a reason to get rid of Charles Xavier, but apparently he's going to Imperial. So who cares?
Yeah, he's going to Imperial. So maybe Jonathan Hickman can unfuck it a little bit, but no, he'll just find a different way to fuck it up. Look, I give this a 1 out of 5. Hey, it's better than my -5 out of 5 that Bug Wars got, or 7 Jason Aarons out of 3. I fucking hated that book so much more than I hated this. This was incompetent and rendered itself irrelevant most of the way through. You got a stupid fight for no reason, and the X-Men are in a worse position than they were before. But at least we're done with the Gail Simone watched Logan and is just doing the same story of Xavier losing control because of a brain degenerative issue.
There you go. That is our first chapter of Worst of the Week. But we've got another review coming. If you would like to check out both this and the unedited version of the Fantastic Four review this week, it is live right now on Thinking Critical Patreon, the Doc Unfiltered Show. We don't censor any of it. We don't edit any of it there. You can get the entire thing live right now. Hope to see you there very soon. There's a link in the video description to the Patreon. The Doc is right here.